Sometimes when you're working on an app, you need to be able to run arbitrary commands. You want to play with your app's modules without running a server. You just want to be able to execute arbitrary statements and immediately see the results. You want a REPL, or read eval print loop, that knows about your application. You can achieve this with the basic node command and a few require statements, but why stop there when you can get crazy with it? That's exactly what we do in this episode. Okay, so first, here's a super simple way of doing this, no code required. First, run the command node, which you'll remember starts a node REPL, and in which you can execute arbitrary commands. Remember how we structured our file so that config application is a module that makes a running program application aware? We can use that in the node REPL too, require config application. That's the same line we use in server.js and in our test setup. Now look what happens when we try to use the app variable. It knows about it, which means that we've loaded our application context into this REPL. But it's tedious having to remember to type that each time, so let's do one better. I think of this console as another program to run, so let's make a directory off our application root called bin. Inside of there, we'll make a file that's just called console, and we'll start it out with these lines. Shebang, user bin env node, and then just a simple console statement. We're going to make this an executable so that we can run it without prefacing it with node. This line tells our shell what program to use to run this file. The console statement is just there so we can prove to ourselves we ran something. We can't quite run it yet because of permissions. If we run ls-lah bin console, we'll see that we don't have execute privileges on the file. Let's fix that. We want to give ourselves, as the file owner, permission to run bin console, so chmod u+x bin console. Now, when we run ls-lah bin console, we see that our execute bit is set. So let's test it. Just type bin console. Great, now let's do something useful. It turns out that Node provides a module for what we're doing. Its name is, wait for it, REPL. And it even has documentation. Be sure to read it for ideas of fun and exciting things to do, but let's have a look at a subset of those fun and exciting things. Let's drop in some more code. Require config application. Just like in server.js and in our test setup, this line is what makes the currently running script app-aware. Next, let's get access to the REPL module by just requiring it. It's a core node module, so we have access to it without npm installing anything. Now we're going to create an instance of REPL and put it to work. We can read in the docs that REPL provides a start function that will create, start, and return an instance of REPL server, which is the real workhorse in a REPL. Let's use that and make something happen, taking care to store a reference to the returned REPL. We can run our console at this point, and this looks a lot like when we just type node at the command line, except our async db loading code trashes our prompt a bit. Oh well, we can just hit enter. Also notice that we have access to app now, which means that we can use app.require, app.model, or whatever we want to. Our REPL here is aware of our app, which was our goal. But it's a bit lacking. I think that prompt could be more descriptive. Let's fix that. To our start command, we just added a simple option here, because REPL.start can take a few options. One of them is prompt, which changes, well, the prompt. Its default is the greater than sign, but we can make it more descriptive. Of course, to get app.name, we'll have to define it quick in config application.js by just dropping in this line. And now when we run our REPL, we know what application we're in. Hooray for clarity! Now, if you know much about terminals or you followed the Learn All the Nodes Twitter stream, you would know that you can exit the node REPL by hitting Ctrl D. You can't really tell it right now, but I'm hitting Ctrl D and nothing is happening. In the documentation, we see that a REPL instance will emit an exit event when users hit Ctrl D, double tap Ctrl C, or type .exit inside the REPL. We just need to respond to that event appropriately. We just use the standard event emitter pattern here, and note that the callback we pass has no parameters. And just to keep our pattern of being friendly, we give a nice little message, goodbye world, and then process.exit, which is a node command to just quit the currently running program. And we pass it as 0 because in the Unix world that says, hey, the program exited with no problems. If you supply a number there, that means there was a problem, and those are apt to find what they mean. Now when we run our console, we can exit it. That's always a plus. Now, running this is easy enough because bin console isn't all that hard to type, but there's one more thing. weird trick to restart our dev server back in episode 30? Well, what if we hook up an npm script for this in our package file? Let's open package.json. Inside of scripts here, we can just put C and then our command to run the console. Now we can invoke this from the command line with npm run C. You can argue if that's better or not, I suppose, but I like it. Slashes are a bit harder to type on a standard keyboard layout than a space is. So what would you actually do with this? Well, those needs would vary quite a bit, but let's demo one thing. Suppose I wanted to quickly see one of the characters in the system. In my console, I have my app context, so I can grab my character model, var character equals app model character, and then I can find one using the find one function, giving it an empty query and a callback to receive the character that I find. Now that's a pretty straightforward Mongoose model invocation there, so I won't belabor that point. If you're wondering what the semicolon and 0 are all about, remember what puts the P in REPL. It prints out the result of whatever we type, and the return value from calling find1 is a big mess. The semicolon starts a new statement, and I just put in 0 for that because it's in my muscle memory. As a result, it only outputs 0 instead of the big mess. Try it without the 0 if you'd like to get a really good feel for why. As we develop Node Slash more and more, there are going to come times when we want to just toy around with some code that we wrote. By using the REPL module, we're able to fire up a script that will stay running so that we can easily load our app context. This is an extremely useful development tool, and we will be using this console as we go through the series. As you might have guessed, we didn't exhaust all the capabilities of the REPL module. We just fired one up inside of a small script that we can invoke from the command line. But REPL is just a module, so it can be used in any Node script, including one that's running on our production server. And it has options to take its input from sources other than standard in, so we could hook it up to any stream we wanted. We'll see some examples of this in later episodes. Until then, happy coding.